Hey everybody, welcome to week 1 here of Old Testament literature 1. And you obviously have been in the course now for 2-3 days and have started the reading and the assignments this week. But I'm going to go through things now, and as we get into close to the weekend and start working on the actual assignments, I want to give kind of an update of what I'm looking for and just kind of an overview of how to complete the assignments moving forward as we get settled into the class a little bit. So again, course objectives for week 1, lesson 1. Lesson 1 and week 1 are the same thing. So when you see week 1 or lesson 1, week 3, lesson 3, same thing. We have 8 weeks and 8 lessons. First thing is utilize basic Bible study skills to utilize or to study the Old Testament legal literature, wrestle with interpretive and theological issues related to the Pentateuch and the law. So those are the 2 main objectives this week as we get going. You'll see here your reading for the week. When you get done with the reading, you need to complete the reading report, and you do need to finish the reading before you start the assignments. So both the legal analysis assignment, which is due this week, and then the class introductions, which most of you have already done. Should do that first. Just say hi everyone, introduce yourself. Because we have so much that's due this week, I'm not going to go and post on everyone's wall. Thank you for posting and saying too much. I'm reading everybody's. I love that we do class introductions because it gives you kind of a feel and a taste that you're a part of something bigger than just where you live or Chicago or America or anywhere else, because we have the privilege of having students all over the globe. But just so you know, I'm not gonna interact too much on the community post class introduction piece. But also feel free to continue to use the community post section for the things that it allows you to use there. So asking questions, prayer requests, things like that, please use that. That's an awesome way for us to stay in touch on various elements of the course. Now, in terms of this week, again, finish this reading. If anyone has any questions on what the reading is, it should be pretty self-explanatory. We divide it up. Here's the textbook reading. So all the stuff is these textbooks in Fee and Stewart, Bartholomew, and then this reading is actually in the Lesson 1 resource folder. So you go down here, you click Lesson 1 resources, and then you find it in there. Does that make sense? Good. So you just click on those PDFs for those. Then you got Bible reading. Not a whole lot, because we're not trying to get you to exhaustively read through the entire Old Testament in this course. We're just wanting you to get a feel for sections of the Old Testament that give you an understanding of this type of literature that we're focusing on. So this week we're obviously getting into some legal and law and the Pentateuch in general. So that's what the Bible reading's towards, although we're also having you start to touch on things like in Psalm, but it goes back into the legal literature in the Pentateuch primarily. All right, so you also have a YouTube clip that kind of gives an overview of Deuteronomy and where we're kind of wanting you to your perspective to start with, and how we want it to shift a little bit from where most Bible students typically are, or where they think things are at when you start reading Genesis and going through, and that it's actually beneficial to start from Deuteronomy, which is where Israel is at when Genesis was written. So that's what that is giving you a little bit of some input on. Now, in terms of the legal analysis assignment, to get the details on that, you just go over to the syllabus and go down to assignment 1. There it is, legal analysis. I'm just going to read through it real quick and then show you exactly how to fill it out. This is quite a straightforward assignment, but to give you kind of the backdrop of what we're thinking here. Many Christians avoid the legal literature in the Bible. However, it's all too crucial to skip over, from the events at Mount Sinai all the way to the beginning of the book of Joshua. Though readers' primary complaint is that the law is boring, at least that's how we tend to see many people in the church thinking, hopefully not you guys, many also feel that it does not represent the God they know and love, meaning that some folks think, when you see the God of of the law in the Old Testament. He's so different than the God we see in the New Testament of Jesus, and there's this divide. He's the same God. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, right? And one of the things we want you to grasp from this is the significance of covenants, the significance of where human history has come from and where it's going, and to see God in new light, in a new lens through the Old Testament. So one reason is that the law is often correlated with legalism. Also, the law appears to be all too thorough, covering everything from sanitation to sex. Some portions of the law are even hard to read due to their very graphic descriptions of ailments and their treatment. Nonetheless, the law is an extremely central portion of the Hebrew Bible and an undergirding theme for the New Testament. It is not only important that students understand the law, but also appreciate it. Remember, David said that the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving or restoring the soul. That's something to consider there. If the law is perfect, but we see all these things of the law that feel so legalistic, then legalism isn't necessarily equating to the concept of the law, and that's often where we get tied up. We equate the law and legalism as the same thing. He also said that he loved the law and meditated on the law day and night. Christ said that he came to fulfill the law, not abolish it, which means what? We're not done with the law just because Christ came. In fact, Christ oftentimes clarified things of the law that were misconstrued or that they were missing in their Judaism. Judaism, my friends, was not actually just the law or the Old Testament version of the Jewish faith. Judaism was actually a New Testament religiosity. I know that's kind of not a real word, but Judaism, when you see Pharisees, Sadducees, that is not part of the law. Those were cultural dynamics that came as a result, really, of legalism and religion, and is a separate aspect of the law itself, especially the perfect law that, of course, David refers to. So Christ came not to fulfill or to abolish it, but to fulfill the law. Paul says in Romans 7 that the law is holy and he delights in it. So ultimately, we know that the law is a really, really good thing. Hopefully your studies this week will help give you some fresh perspective on that. In this assignment, you're going to study the law to examine what it itself shows about God's care for his people. Examine the following passages and discuss how each of them demonstrates God's intense precautionary love for Israel. So this is what you're going to go through. A, B, and C, you're going to have these scriptures that we're going to use, and now I'm going to walk you through it based on the worksheet. So that's the assignment. Now to go into week 1, you're always going to have what you need in each week's folder. Go down into Lesson 1 resource folder, and to fulfill the assignment, you're just going to click on the legal analysis worksheet. So click on that worksheet, open that up. It's opening up twice for me. There we go. So you get that worksheet opened up, and again, it just has the instructions that you need here. What you're basically going to do is you're going to look at these 5 passages, all right? So you don't need to rewrite them. I've got it right here in this worksheet for you, and you're just going to essentially do this. You're going to answer the questions by doing A. What's A? How does each of these laws serve Israel in such a way as they would in the end be blessed? So according to Exodus 20:13, how do I answer A? So in A, I'm just going to respond to how does that work for Exodus 20:13. Then I'm going to go B. What does each say about God's desire to bless Israel? So in Exodus 20:13, what does this speak into the concept of God's desire to bless Israel? So I'm going to type that in. And then C, discuss any necessary historical cultural influences in the text that might enhance this study, if applicable. So for instance, when you're reading Exodus 20:13, now when you're reading this, would it help you to think through maybe some historical or cultural dynamics or influences that would speak into maybe contextualizing or understanding this passage and applying it this way more effectively? Now, to give you a hint, big hint, read this section, those pages, and I think that'll really help for this. If you have questions, let me know. So we gave you a big hint in terms of the reading this week that should help answer this question. So this is just to help you start thinking of the historical cultural influences in the text that you can start to add to your typical studies of passages. So under each thing, you're just going to fill in, A, B, C, like that, and you're just, so under each section or under each passage and in the student's analysis, you'll have an A, B, C for each one of those, and that's it. Now the grading this week, we're not going to give you tons of feedback on this, because this isn't one where I'm looking for necessarily super specific answer. It's more like, if you did this well, you're going to get full credit. If you didn't, I'm going to basically say, hey, you either skim through this. It's really easy to tell with work like this. I want you to do a good job. I can tell in a very brief amount of time if a student really got the concepts and put the effort in, or if they just were trying to turn something in last minute. So definitely put the time in. But essentially, I'm not going to be writing tons of stuff on this. This is a pretty much do the assignment on here, look at these texts, put the thought process into answering these questions, that you're going to get full credit. Does that make sense? So when you look in Blackboard in your grade, you're probably going to either have 100 or you're going to have a poor grade because you didn't really do the assignment. So that's really it. And then at the end of the week, what I'll do is I'll give you an example. Here's a really good legal analysis worksheet that you can kind of compare to your own notes. Other assignments in the class will be more professor interactive in terms of giving you feedback on your work. This one, not so much. We have a lot of assignments in the class, so I'm picking the ones that I put the time in to giving you feedback. This isn't one of them. So any questions on that, let me know. And that pretty much describes the legal analysis worksheet. Now I want to run in, I've only got a couple minutes left, to describe the discussion board for this week. So if you flip down to the discussion board, in week 1, we're going to be beginning the course in Deuteronomy, as I mentioned earlier, instead of Genesis. So why do you think this might be? Consider the author and the audience of both Deuteronomy and Genesis, the timing of events, etc. How might understanding the context of Deuteronomy influence one's reading of Genesis? I obviously touch on that in the YouTube video that you're to watch, but I want you to put that in writing in your own thoughts now after reflecting on that video and doing your reading this week. With this in mind, consider the following. The book of Genesis devotes 14 chapters to telling the story of how Abraham's descendants came to live in Egypt in the Joseph story. In comparison, it spends only 2 chapters on the entire story of creation. Not exactly equal, huh? So part 1, given the context of the writing of the Pentateuch, as previously discussed, why might the author of Genesis have devoted so much effort to the story of Abraham's descendants going down to Egypt? Now here's a clue. Why would this have been significant to his audience at the time of writing? Whenever you're writing, especially on the literature piece, but really even when you're doing Bible study, sermon prep, you always want to start with what this meant to Israel when you're, even in the New Testament, but especially in the Old Testament, what's the author trying to communicate to Israel? So that's essentially what we're wanting you to do in part 1. Today, more time and study is devoted to the first 2 chapters of Genesis than the other 48 combined. Given these chapters compose roughly 4% of the book, what level of concern do you believe the author had for the creation account relative to the other events of Genesis? So all that is to say is we give a lot of debate and back and forth over those first 2 chapters, and not nearly as much understanding to the significance of the rest of the book of Genesis. How can that affect just how we apply the book of Genesis and apply the first 2 chapters and that sort of thing? So I want to give you a chance to give some thoughts on that. The way I want you to compose this, what's probably easiest is if you just take this discussion, cut and paste it like that, and just do like a little copy paste thing. Put that into the discussion board. So to get to the discussion board, you just hit group discussions and then go into the first week and start a new thread. And then I want you to paste this and then just write underneath each question your answer to those things, right? So that's going to be your first post of the week that's due Friday night at midnight. So answer each question. So you'll have a bit of answering here, when to this question, or probably here too. Why do you think this might be? Answer that. Not obviously expansive on each one, but answer that piece under that, then answer that piece under that. then you're going to answer under part 1 and part 2. So you're going to have,